All right, I'm here with Nami, and this is Nami's Roadmap to Success video. Now, she's doing kind of what we talked about in the video above, but she's still chewing out bullies. This is actually a collagen stick from our buddies over at Barkworthy's. But again, you can see that she's really occupied with that. She's not really interested in what I'm doing. And so remember to get those. I would have you guys go and get, a bag of bully bites. I would get a couple kneecaps. Now, some of these are organic materials, so they're not going to last forever. Bully bites usually last for a good amount of time. Collagen sticks I probably have the longest shelf life. But keep them in a bag or whatever it is. But you want to have a couple of those. So if you have an unexpected house guest come over, you have a couple of things ready to go. The lick mat, try to practice giving her a lick mat a couple times without anything, no bath, no nail trimming or anything like that, so she feels comfortable with it. Okay, the Guardians here already know about marker words and hand targeting, so we skipped a lot of the stuff that I normally have to go over, which is great. We covered more. I'd like to make sure that you are, when it comes to exercise, we just talked about this just a second ago, but you can exercise over a long period of time, but exercise is best in shorter spurts, especially if we're using exercise to set her up for success, like for a house guest, or a lot of people don't even think about this, but you can exercise your dog before you take it for a walk. Just make sure that after exercise, they get 10 minutes or so to rest, no panting before, otherwise they'll be worse behaved, because they're short of breath. Also, I mentioned this earlier, I'm guessing the Guardians here know this, but make sure your dog is not doing anything, a lot of lateral movements with food in their stomach. Their stomachs are distended, so they're not attached to anything. So if they're full of food, they can swing around. Sometimes they flip over, they can pressurize and explode. It can be fatal for dogs. So you usually don't want to exercise your dog anything that's lateral movement, like running or fetching, until it's been about 60 to 90 minutes afterwards before you do that exercise, or just feed them afterwards. Let me see. We went over teaching manners. Let's stick on exercise. Mental stimulation and physical exercise. So I recommend the Runda, R-H-U-N-D-A mat. And if you just search for Snuffle mat on Amazon, usually it's that one. You'll see it's gray and it's got a band around it. And that's the one that I like. There's other manufacturers that look like the same thing. But make sure you have it so the tassels are standing up. And each time you feed her, flip it over. And so all the tassels are going down, then gently put it back, and then kind of waterfall the food. Sometimes you can press it in, but most likely waterfall, it kind of goes in there. It'll just make it a little bit longer. And when you have guests come over, I would definitely utilize that. When you have guests over, I didn't mention this video above, but I would probably like to see her getting some exercise about every 1 to 2 or 3 hours, shorter bursts of exercise more frequently, to prevent her from doing the demand jumping up and all that, because we're satisfying her needs early. So when you have guests come over, maybe have the guests take out for a walk with you guys first couple times. Eventually it's perfect if you can get the guests to actually take her for a walk by themselves after you've gone out together as a group, so she feels comfortable, confident with them, and have them take the same path, and have them give a treat pouch like this. This is the mini treat pouch from PetSafe, the one I like. It's got room for poop bags. You can put the clicker in there, a couple different types of treats. You can clip it on and give it to your guest. Now your guest is out with her and giving her a whole lot of treats on the walk. And the guest is stopping every once in a while. Sit, yes, treat. Make sure you explain to your guests how to use yes. And remember, for you guys, say yes and don't say good girl or anything else. Yes, and don't say anything else for 5 seconds, so it can kind of linger and she can latch onto that word. So I like to alternate between mental stimulation and physical exercise. So every other one is a different one. You guys have a good assortment. We went over those things, but I would get the Omega Paw Tricky Treat Ball. That's the large one. And that's the one that's another thing that you could have her doing with the guests, because she's nudging that thing around. It keeps her occupied. Remember to get a whole bunch of, start saving small boxes and get that doggy confetti, so you have that kind of ready to go. And again, I'd put a pile there, maybe a pile over there, a pile in there, or maybe one in the bedroom, so you have 4 different places for her to go. And you get a new box, add it to there. And after a while, people are like, are you a pack rat? No, we're just, it's a cozy apartment, so we don't have a ton of places for her to look, but the boxes kind of amplify that greatly. Let me see. I guess physical exercise, the Guardians here are doing a really good job of that. I would just probably make them a little bit shorter, more frequent. We also went over manners. So remember, if she is doing something you don't want, so if she jumps up for you guys and you're petting her, that's making her more likely to do that for guests. So that a little bit of that might be a crossover. So remember, when she nudges you or paws you or barks or demands attention, you're going to give her a do-over. Sit. If she sits, yes, pet her under her chin. And then pet her wherever you want, and do whatever you want. Give her something else to do, or take her for a walk or something else. Otherwise, she's going to nudge you again. She's staying on board. So a little set games, a little sniff walk, whatever it is. Otherwise, she's going to probably go back to doing it. Now, I usually use the watchword of manners. So if somebody comes in the room and she's jumped up and she's here and she's pawing at me and I'm playing a video game, or probably not playing a video game, but watching TV and I'm petting her, they're going to say manners. I'm going to stop, tell her to sit one time. If she sits, I'm going to say mark word, pet her, and then thank my partner for helping me, and then give her something else to do. So it just gets you in a habit of doing it. You can pet her anytime you want. She doesn't have to do anything to get the pets. But remember, anything she's doing right before you pet her is what you're specifically rewarding her for. And that's why we went over how to use that pause interrupter. So we can either just go, yeah, looks like you have a cigar now. She's sitting on the couch. I don't know if you can see the shot. Or I can say, beep, 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 beep. Or puppy, 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 touch. Yes. So when she's doing something you don't want, you're going to interrupt her. Because remember, if we say, don't do that, that's like giving her a treat. So if she's sniffing the guest house backpack or getting in the trash, I'm going to make that sound. When she looks at me, I do that touch. She runs over and touches, and then I reward her for that, and then I'm going to give her something else to do so that she doesn't go back to doing the other thing. Most of us actually train our dogs to offer unlearned behaviors. And that's why I really am a big believer of celebrating, which is really a form of operant conditioning. Celebrating or rewarding the dog when it offers behaviors that you like unrequested. So when she comes to you, yes. When she sits down, yes. When she lays down, yes. And you're petting her after these things. But if she does anything weird, she grumbled a little bit. Now you guys might not want to do that because you don't like her doing it for guests. But if she stretches, if she drinks water, so the more you reward her for the things that she does that you like, the more she's going to do those things to get your attention because it works. And so I use the watchword to celebrate. So if you see I'm sitting here and she walks up and sits down and I don't see it, somebody says celebrate to me. I say yes, and I reach in and pet her. So the more that we get in a habit of doing that, then she'll start sitting to ask for attention as opposed to pawing or jumping up. So if you see her go to a guest and sit down in front of the guest, make sure that guest is rewarding her. And if the guest doesn't, make sure you do it. So she's like, she did it the right way, but if it doesn't work, then she's going to do the pawing and all the rest of that stuff. Now, we also went over dog consent. A lot of people don't realize that petting dogs on top of the head is something that most dogs really don't like. They can learn to become conditioned to it, but if you see your dog turning its head, lowering its head, backing away, the ears flipping, rotating back, looking at you with whale eye, going from an open mouth to a closed mouth, rolling over and giving you the belly, or not coming to you, those are cutoff signals. Those are the dog's way of saying, I disagree, or I don't feel comfortable, or you don't have my consent. So dogs have consent just like we do. They're much more tolerant than we are. But eventually, sometimes dogs learn to nip or bite because they're offering cutoff signals. People keep on doing that. So when you're meeting people, remember, tell people if they want to meet her, just say, yeah, we just like to ask you to hold your hand out so they can sniff first. And if she touches her nose to her hand, they're saying yes. And that's kind of why we do hand targeting. It kind of helps facilitate that a little bit, which is why hand targeting for your guests is nice to help you understand if she likes and feels trusting enough to come to the guest or not. So they hold their hand out, she touches their nose, then tell them, yeah, she loves being petted on her chin. So now they're petting her in the place that she likes, and they're not petting her on top of the head. And if if at any point she turns her head aside, or when they hold their hand out, she turns her head aside, oh, I forgot, she has ringworm. We just saw the vet, and it's contagious for humans, so nobody's supposed to pet her. They'll give you a dirty look, that's fine. You're managing the situation so she doesn't have to. So remember, anytime she's barking or growling, never ever correct a dog for barking or growling. That's the dog's way of saying, I disagree or I feel uncomfortable. Your job is to increase the distance. So if you can recognize her warning signals, which you talked about earlier, so you see her ears flip back and she lowers her head, turns aside, and then you make the thing go away or you take her away, she doesn't have to raise her level of retort. Most dogs, a bite is a form of communication. We don't like it, but it means that you haven't listened to my other forms of communication. And that can happen really fast. So you got to really be cognizant. And also be aware of your surroundings, your environment. If she does have somebody that she doesn't get along with, write it down. Maybe she doesn't like people with beards, or people who are, and it's not that she doesn't like people with beards. Maybe somebody with a beard, she was going to get a pet from them, and somebody slammed the door at the same time. She got spooked. It has nothing to do with the beard, but it just was a kind of an accidental pairing. So watch out for those things. If she does have a reaction, take a couple notes and write that stuff down. You might notice a trend. It's people wearing big gloves. Okay, well then we can desensitize her with those gloves. Now we also talked about the counter conditioning and the desensitization. So she seems to be more reactive to footsteps out the door. So when you guys are coming home, call or text each other. I am going to come home and let's do the footsteps thing. So, and at first you're going to, remember when you're doing it, you want to have a low enough level where she doesn't react. So what I would do is be talking on earbuds, and then when you're coming in and say, okay, I'm in the hallway, okay, and I pull, so that way I have a treat. I don't want to be like hear the sound and I'm going over here and trying to open it up, I only have 2 seconds. I've way blown the 2 seconds. So instead, I quietly have these out, and I would have these in like a Tupperware, because you hear that sound caused her to come over. It's an association. So if I have Tupperware, I can open that up, pull these out. She doesn't even know when the person's coming over, and I'd probably use Charlie Bear's lower level treat. And then we have, okay, I'm ready for you. So when I stop talking, within 2 seconds later, I want you to step. Step, and then you give her your treat. She doesn't have to do anything. Put the treat in her mouth. And then grab, okay, and then you say, come up with another word. Don't always say okay, because eventually that becomes a, so, all right, next one, whatever it is. And so now we have another footstep. Remember, at first it's one step that's light, pause, and then we give her the treat after it. If she doesn't react, if she reacts, that was too intense. We need to make it lower. Now we can do that by recording the footsteps, so we can play those on here. But the fidelity is going to be different, so it would be really best if we do it outside. But eventually it gets to the point where you have clown shoes and you're stomping the ground outside, and she's looking around like, you know, somebody owes me a treat, right? So what we're doing is we're rewarding her, making that an antecedent. So then when there's this footstep outside, to her that means instead of something I should bark at, that means that's something that is going to get me a treat. We also talked about the Premack principle. The Premack principle means the less desirable behavior earns you more desirable behavior. So if you're going to play fetch, sit, and then I pick up the object and throw it. Or if I'm going to prepare her food, sit, and then I'll start opening the cupboard and doing that stuff. Or you got to sit before I open the door to let you out of the kennel, or lay down, or whatever. There's a lot of these that are done with sit. It can be other things as well. We just want her to have to do something to get something, and not for everything. Not everything in life has to be for paid for, but it just is a nice way to help develop what I like to call a healthy leader-follower dynamic. Sit, yes, and try to incorporate a couple rules. Not just arbitrary rules, but ways for her to practice a little self-restraint, self-control. Sit. That's the benefit of hand target. See how I manipulated her without having to touch her? She preferred that. Dogs don't like being manhandled just like we don't. Well, this is my I would say handsome. She is handsome, but she's a good-looking girl. And this is Nami for Tsunami. And sit. And this is Tsunami's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it. Sit. Yes. Such a good puppy.